In this episode, you'll see James's mother, his grandmother, horrible cooking, some delicious food, an unpleasant face, a new disease, and Mr. McDowell. Oh, and bloopers. So, join us for the latest installation of James Dreadful and the Spell Guardian.
James? James!
His mother was calling him. Even before the kitchen door had slammed behind him, he could hear it. She was upset.
Yeah.
Crap, he thought. Did Heisenberg tell her I was being a moron? He stopped in the doorway. His mother, Celine, had just hung up the house phone, her cheeks flushed with splotches of coral red. He could smell that she was making dinner, a vegan dinner. Vegan was her latest thing. It had not been enough to have to endure years of vegetarianism with her. Now it was veganism. That meant apple buckwheat pancakes, chickpea and onion omelette, and blueberry French toast muffins for breakfast or dinner. She was one of those who believed that pancakes and omelettes could be served at any time of the day. And there was nothing wrong with that. It sounded absolutely scrumptious, and the pictures looked scrumptious. At least they did on the recipe website. But if only you could eat pictures. She'd quit her job as a dentist's assistant and was now applying the meticulous skills of oral hygiene to the culinary field. And those really don't mix. When he walked in, he could smell that she'd already burned one of the pancakes. The chickpea and onion omelet was so overcooked it looked like she'd attacked it with a flamethrower, and the French toast was black with tiny bits of egg white peeking out at him. Her project had evidently taken its toll on her. There was batter spattered on her apron, spilled almond milk and chia seeds scattered on the stove, and cinnamon touching her cheek like blush, where a lock of blonde hair had crept loose from her ponytail. A fingerprint of batter smudged with cinnamon was smeared over her glasses rim and dripped onto her nose, and there was a red mark where she tried to scratch it off with a black fingernail.
James!
She said again when she noticed him. Her voice wavered as she spoke, and he noticed that her bottom lip trembled.
She's not gonna make it!
Who?
James asked, looking at her. He went still, his breath catching in his throat. She looked as though someone was about to croak. She choked back a sob.
I knew it when I heard her coughing the other day. We'll have to go to see her before she, you know.
Before.
James stopped.
Is this about Grandma?
The last he heard about her mother, she was just fine in Houston, Texas, putting rounds into St. Pauli Gurl bottles with her new AR-15.
James, get a load of this baby. I'm gonna light her up.
No, James!
Celine sniffed and left the kitchen for the bathroom. He found himself rushing over to the stove to remove the pan to keep it from burning.
Betty Boop!
James heaved a sigh. No, not the cartoon. He was sure the cartoon was still kicking it. It was her 1982 Volkswagen Beetle, which had a Betty Boop bumper sticker.
Christ.
She's dead!
She's prehistoric.
Don't say that!
Celine wiped the corner of her eye as she came back into the kitchen.
Bob says it's transmission. Fixing her will be.
She gestured expansively with her hands.
Jeez.
He said.
I can be a pallbearer at her funeral. How's that?
You being a smartass? All right, I'm calming down.
What a drama queen.
I'm calm now.
Does she need a glass of water?
Okay. I'm calm.
Wow, that was amazing.
Have a pancake. I also have some wheatgrass if you'd like to.
No thanks.
James shook his head, taking a seat. His mother had decided to grow her own wheatgrass farm and had planted it in a jar on the windowsill like a first-grade experiment. He tried some of the pancakes. He flipped over the hardened slab to find unmixed flour fried into some parts. It also tasted wrong. Like very wrong. She liked to experiment, and had put quinoa in it. Quinoa was a superfood, she'd said. That was good. But the superfood made some super disgusting pancakes. He took a few more bites, choked back bile, and decided to wash the nausea away with apple cider. She sat, propped her elbows on the table, and raised her eyebrows hopefully.
So, what do you think?
Huh?
You know.
Food?
James ventured. Being truthful with Celine about her cooking was about as safe as dancing through the Korean demilitarized zone.
It's good,
He lied.
but I'm, not hungry.
Why aren't you hungry? Are you sick?
She pressed the back of her hand to his forehead.
Well,
She reached for her phone, but James quickly shook his head.
I'm fine, really.
He was sure that if she looked up his symptoms on WebMD, she would probably find a disease where you avoided eating your mother's horribly cooked vegan food.
If you're not gonna eat anymore, then let's go.
She said, wiping her hands on her apron.
Where am I going?
Suddenly, the doorbell rang.
I'll get it.
Celine said, and went to the door.
Now's my chance.
When the door
Put this in the
opened,
trash.
James heard a man say,
Afternoon, ma'am.
Afternoon. Detective?
Murray Police Department.
Come inside.
Celine said as the detective held up his badge for her to study.
Is everything all right? I mean, what's going on?
Just here to find that out, ma'am. I have a few questions for James. I'm Detective Wayne McDowell.
Oh.
Celine said, though not sounding too surprised. James felt his heart skip a beat as the detective stepped into the kitchen. The man had a head of thinning hair shot with grays and wore a navy blue collar shirt tucked into a pair of buttermilk-colored corduroys. James stood up, sticking his hands in his pocket.
Crap. Maybe it's Mr. Carbonaro filing sexual harassment charges against me.
You want to talk to me?
But McDowell just smiled.
I'm here because...
I know why you're here.
Celine said, as she set to work cleaning up the place. She grabbed a dishcloth and began scrubbing batter off the stove. The color was slowly ebbing from her cheeks.
Please excuse the mess.
Mom, what's going on?
So what have you heard?
She said, turning to look at McDowell while ignoring the question.
No new developments. Personally, I can't talk about the case with you, but...
Figures.
She said quietly. James looked at his mother, raising his eyebrows.
Yes, but I was hoping.
Mrs. Brady,
The detective said, drumming his fingertips on a granite composite countertop.
it's entirely possible he'll...
Come here?
McDowell smiled reassuringly and raised a hand.
Don't worry. We have someone watching your house.
Celine sat, the dish rag still in her hand.
Seems he had help.
Or maybe one of his vanishing hacks.
Wait, what's going on?
Celine sighed and looked down. Then she raised her eyes at James.
Listen, James. Your, grandfather broke out.
Yeah, I figured that part out.
James snapped. He stared insistently at her, but she didn't meet his eyes this time.
You knew this already and you're only telling me now?
She shot a look at McDowell.
I didn't want you to.
Worry?
James finished, looking at her scathingly. McDowell watched Celine, then turned his attention to James.
Well, now more than ever it's important that you know.
Yes, of course.
Celine said, dropping the cloth on the table to pick at dough trapped beneath her fingernails.
I was hoping you'd have caught him so I wouldn't have to.
When did he escape?
His mother paused, then sighed.
Yesterday.
He found himself staring at the mess left on the table. It wouldn't be long then, before the kids at school started gossiping about it again.
James, I don't want you thinking about him, or any of that stuff. James's psychiatrist referred to it as folie à deux.
Shared delusional disorder.
The detective said, nodding.
Well, you understand that hearing about him breaking out might
Have
cause
a
him
relapse?
James said, looking up and folding his arms. Here we go again.
I'm gonna start barking like a harrier the minute I hear Grandpa's busted out of the joint. Is that right?
to. That's not funny, James.
Woof, 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 woof.
Stop it!
Celine shouted.
Well, stop treating me like I'm 5.
Detective McDowell looked at James.
I understand your frustration. You were misled.
He said, glancing at Celine before meeting James's eyes again.
He was a professional con man. In a way, the whole world shared his delusion for a while.
Gee, that must be embarrassing to you guys. I mean, you are the police, right?
James quipped.
James!
Celine snapped again.
Just saying.
Detective McDowell gave him a tense smile.
It's an ongoing investigation.
Has he been spotted anywhere?
Let us worry about that. The only thing you need to know is that he's dangerous.
After the man left, Celine shut the door and spun around to glare at James.
What's your problem?
Nothing.
I didn't raise you to be a smartass.
Whatever.
He didn't feel like going anywhere with her now.
I'm going to my room.
When he got to his bedroom, he slammed the door and collapsed on his bed. For a while, he did nothing but stare at the wall, furious at his mother. How could she not tell him about his grandfather? Before long, however, he found himself Googling Mr. Dreadful on his laptop. Immediately, articles and YouTube videos popped up. There were almost 1 million hits. One of the things that popped up was a YouTube video from Top Magician. He clicked on it. It started with the old man hobbling onto a stage before 3 judges. He wore an old green robe and carried a stick with a crow's feather on its tip.
Yes, call me Mr. Dreadful,
he announced, taking out a pipe and lighting it, before rapping the stage with his stick for attention.
Are you out of your mind?
One of the judges said.
What era are you from where smoking in public is acceptable? Put that bloody thing out, mate.
Mr. Dreadful ignored him.
Trapdoors, sleight of hand tricks, doves hidden in your pockets with strings, flash paper, and misdirection. That's what you call magic these days. But true magic it isn't. True magic is a cosmic mystery that is never truly understood.
And then he gave the pipe a puff. The cloud of smoke floated across the stage, and Mr. Dreadful muttered something through his lips. Suddenly, the smoke cloud turned into a smoke horse and galloped through the air over the heads of the judges. People screamed, some fainted. The judges' faces turned pale as they watched the man direct the mount around the auditorium. Finally, a frustrated judge stood up and cried.
I'm speechless. How the bloody hell are you doing that?
Next, a smoke tiger appeared out of thin air, and then erupted into bubbles shaped like animals. Music played and colorful lights waxed and waned, and people crawled through the audience to touch the bubble shapes. Smoke turned into colorful phantom giraffes galloping across the stage before morphing into a great dragon. Then it flew over the audience before bursting into 1 million moths that scattered around the auditorium. The clip had garnered over 100 million views. Incredible, he thought. Nobody knew how he did it, and he never told his secrets, despite many interviews. There were people who thought he was really a magician, but they were marginalized as conspiracy theorists. James tried to remember life before adoption. He tried to remember the night of the fire. He went to his closet and pulled out an old box. When he was 7 or 8, he'd drawn hundreds of pictures, and he kept those in the box. He didn't know why he'd saved them. He'd drawn pictures and hung them all over his walls. There were pictures he'd drawn of a place he called Gingerbread Land, but it was really a magical realm. There were flying carpets, spells for fireballs, and pictures of dragons, goblins, and ogres. And then there was the other picture. The one he'd drawn with a hood and no eyes. The hood was long and droopy, as were the sleeves, and the black robe that dragged on the ground. When he thought of the picture, an image appeared in his head, an image of the real figure. The picture had frightened him. He taped it on the wall out of pride. But one night, he had torn it down, balled it up, and thrown it away. Was it Mr. Dreadful resurfacing in his subconscious? For one instant, he recalled being in a place with a raging fire, smoke filling his lungs. He did another internet search, but this time he searched the words Mr. Dreadful and fire, and another article came up. There was a picture of a 5-year-old. He stared at the boy, and it took a few seconds for him to recognize that he was looking at himself. Boy 5 nearly burns in home of famous magician, the article read. James felt a chill escape down his spine. But this man, he was not the dark thing he'd drawn in the picture. He was a lunatic, maybe. There was a picture of Mr. Dreadful in handcuffs being led away by authorities. His face looked deranged. And there he sat, young James, wrapped in a blanket, his face covered in soot. I must have blocked it all out. I was 5 at the time. That's me. I'm that boy. It took a while for it to sink in. He spent the next half hour reading articles online, reflecting and drinking bark soda, and it wasn't until somewhere around 4:30 that he heard a knock on his door. That must be Mom wanting me to come along with her to the auto shop, he thought. He'd forgotten about that. He didn't feel like going with her. He knew she'd nag him in the car or lecture him about his attitude.
What?
James!
It was his mother, just as he thought, her voice bristling with excitement.
James! You'll never believe who's here to see you! Open the door!
Sighing, he got up. Undoubtedly, it was his friend Arnie coming to hit on his mother under the pretense he wanted to see his friend. Or maybe he was here to ask about the detective guy. It was a bit absurd she'd act all stupid about it. Maybe she was hoping he'd forgive her for lying to him. He went to the door, scowling. He wasn't going to put on a smile for her. If she wanted to be bubbly and apologetic, she could do that all she liked. She'd have to work to get back into his good graces. Still, he wanted to see Arnie to tell him everything he'd heard. When he threw the door open, his mother stood there with this stupid grin on her face, like she had a huge secret, like the President of the United States was standing behind her.
What?
He said again.
James, look who's come to visit you!
She stepped aside. James felt his heart stop as a tall, old man holding a wooden stick stepped forward into the doorway. He couldn't help but let his jaw drop.
Mr. Dreadful?
I know, right?
Celine said, seeing his expression.
I see you have the good habit of leaving your mouth open.
Mr. Dreadful said. He had the commanding baritone of a man bristling with confidence, a man who could tame a room full of rowdy people in the snap of a finger. He turned to Mrs. Brady.
He got it from his father. It is a good way to catch tooth fairies. They're worth a lot in the old world.
You're a regular George Carlin, you are!
Celine giggled, slapping the old man on the shoulder.
I'm going downstairs to finish making dinner. James, we'll go to the mechanic tomorrow. Are you staying for pancakes, Arthur? Can I call you Arthur?
Yes, you can. And I'll take a rain check on the pancakes.
Mr. Dreadful said.
Although they smell delicious. Unfortunately, we have some things to do.
Celine went downstairs and James stared at the old man. When she was out of earshot, he growled.
Did you put a hex on my mother?
Please like and subscribe for more episodes of the Midjourney Storyteller.
Okay. I'm calming down now. I'm calm.
Mom? Are you okay? Mom? I think she's calming down.
Okay, I'm calm. Come on, James. Aren't you hungry?
Really? Does she think I'm gonna eat this crap?
James, eat.
I'll eat when she stops looking at me like that.
James, they're hungry people all over the world. Eat.
There isn't a person hungry enough to eat this crap.
I'm not what I asked you again. Eat.
I've seen her get like this before. I better eat.
I'll get it.
Hello, I'm Officer McDowell. I wanted to talk. Think I have the wrong house. Goddamn, she's ugly. She can scare Dreadful away herself.
Do you know where I can find the Bradys?
Hello, would you like to come in?
I think someone laced my donut.
Try some of my vegan delicacies.
All units. I have a perp armed with a deadly weapon.
Woof, 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 woof.
What's did I tell you about riling up the dogs?